You're listening to 15 Minutes, where we feature community leaders sharing what the rest of us should know but likely don't.
Hello, everyone. Michael Renfro here. I'm the host of 15 Minutes, where we talk with top-notch law firms, lawyers, and other professionals on what it takes to grow a successful business and many times, obviously, law practice. This episode is brought to you by Gladiator Law Marketing, where we deliver tailor-made services to help you accomplish your objective and maximize your growth potential. To have a successful marketing campaign and make sure you're getting the best ROI possible, your firm does need to have the best and better website, if you will, and better content than all the other competitors. And at Gladiator, we use artificial intelligence combined with machine learning and literally now more than a century of combined experience to outperform that competition. To learn more, please go to gladiatorlawmarketing.com, which is gladiatorlawmarketing.com. Anyway, let's go ahead and get right into it. Today's guest is a little different than our normal guest. He is out of Santa Barbara. His name is Nels Henderson, and he does, I'll tell you this, though, he guaranteed the man works with a ton of attorneys and knows attorneys very well. But he does more of the notary thing, and he's also worked with a lot of campaigns politically from, I think you said, all the way down from the smallest local to even federal campaigns. Is that correct?
City council all the way through Congress, and I even worked in a presidential, the Iowa caucus one year in 1988 for Senator Paul Simon.
I remember that.
Yeah,
I'm actually old enough to remember that.
Right, exactly. It was an experience of a lifetime just to be there, you know.
I think
got a chance to meet lots of people.
I find doing any of that kind of stuff, and what I mean by that is, I've said it before on the show with other guests. Many times, we don't realize when we're actually a part of history. And in fact, we're always a part of history. We're making our history as we do it, and all of us are going to be a part of it. Some of us are maybe mentioned more than others, but I truly believe in the 6 degrees of separation as well as the butterfly effect. So even though some of us are not maybe seen, we're definitely heard in other ways.
Definitely.
And we're all part of this history. It's really amazing as you look back, because I'm now half a century, right? And that's enough to really take a good gander. And you look, man, and just talking to you and reading what you were going to talk about today, I mean, you've done quite a bit yourself, and it's really awesome when we get a chance to start looking back. I feel privileged to make it this. If anybody who dies younger than I am already, I feel for, because, again, the older you get, the more you kind of get to take in and not look back in a bad way, but look back in a good way and use that to continue to move forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's important to have a lot of gratitude for where you came from. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. How did you get started, man?
So I got started probably, I guess you'd say, in college. I interned for a state assemblyman, and he asked me to take care of lawn signs on his campaign. And so I've turned out I was good at campaign work, and I kept on doing it every 6 months or so when the next campaign would start. And before you knew it, I was running those campaigns. I had a political consulting firm for quite a while, and that got me into marketing, really. One of the things about it was that, there was a lot of growth in that time period in terms of the work I was doing. And I ended up running campaigns in 2 different counties and having the time of my life. I wasn't making much money, but I was having the time of my life. And, I was thinking about how many jobs I had back then, right? Because not only was I a campaign manager, but I was also waiting table.
Right.
I was a graphic designer at a printer, and like putting together ads for real estate companies, that kind of thing. So I was trying to gather as much experience as I could at that point. And it took quite a while. I mean, there were months that I didn't know if I was going to be able to pay rent, but I did, and oftentimes barely making it. And it took a few years, to kind of get everything together. But it's one of those things that I'm really happy that I had those experiences. Like we're saying, a lot of gratitude for that. So.
Oh yeah, they made you who you are.
Yeah. So later on, I was lucky enough to actually worked for a congressman. And then he ended up passing away. It was Walter Capps. I saw him one morning, and he flew to Washington later that morning and ended up having a heart attack at Dulles International Airport when he got there. And it kind of got me. He was one of the good ones, and so I ended up getting out of politics. I went in the tech field for a while, worked for Citrix Online, for Go to My PC, Go to Assist, Go to Meeting. Had a great time there. Learned so much about marketing and especially digital strategy and tactics. And at the same time, I was getting my master's degree, and then Antioch University asked me to teach, and now I'm teaching at UCSB as well. And I'm still doing quite a few things. It's kind of like that In Living Colors sketch from a long time ago. Remember that one with how many jobs you got? So with the West Indians, it's pretty fun.
No, what's funny is I'm right there with you though, because I myself am ADHD, and I don't like to take medications. And what I find is if I have an overwhelming amount of projects, there's a stress with it, but there's also a comfortability for me where I continue to do a little bit of each one and make sure that they all get done on time. I am a classic procrastinator, but
but it ends up happening, right?
Right.
Yeah. And when we were kids, they didn't really talk that much about ADHD, right? Or they just give you riddles, I guess.
It was back then they just called it bipolar, as a matter of fact.
Right.
Typically it was misdiagnosed because ADHD they're up and down the same, very, very similar to bipolar.
Yeah.
Are you yourself ADD or ADHD?
I wonder now, now that I know more about it, I've never been properly diagnosed, but I am always doing something. And I enjoy that, so, I probably have some tendencies, but I wouldn't say that I am necessarily, but I
think the entire social planet at this point has a little bit of
something like that.
Yeah, because the way that information content is delivered to us now, it's almost impossible to not want something new every 3 minutes.
Yeah, it is. It's overwhelming. It's great. So that's how I started, just doing a lot of different things, trying to gather as much experience as I could. And I think the farther I got, the longer I was in it, the more context I was able to put towards what I was doing. One of the things about
continued networking it in the sense of finding those right people and kind of putting them off until the right moment, if you will.
Yeah. And learning, like a lot of times I like know innately like what to do or how to do, but then it would be someone, a mentor or a person I was working with that would name what I was doing. Right. It's like, oh, that's a good strategy. Oh, that strategy. Cool. And I just keep on going. And that's how the early days were, learning as fast and failing as fast as possible and pivoting and continuing,
No, I get it. What do you think was the biggest turning point that took you? Because, obviously you were talking a lot there about the early days and how not just, you were barely making it, but you would have to have 2 or 3 different gigs in order to make it. Right. But now you have 2 or 3 gigs because you want to. So where was the turning point from where it went, where it was not a need, but a want to have multiple things, if you will?
I think I probably had a few turning points, frankly. I mean, when I really look at it, in the early 90s, I was running a nonprofit organization, and it was an HIV/AIDS education organization.
Makes sense.
And we ended up interacting with President-elect Bill Clinton, close by here in Summerlin. And the news about it went around the world. And
nice.
I'll never forget, like, running down to the LA Press Club, because back then you didn't really do podcasts or YouTube video or whatever.
Right. So, at best you had facts.
Yeah. Our founder and I went down there. I was like coaching him on what to do in front of TV and, how to talk. Don't say that,
Right.
Being a PR guy. And that was a big turning point for me because it was so exciting to make a difference on a national level, to bring that kind of education to people. And
that sounds like it was a blast, actually.
It was. And Bill was generous and kind to my friend who had HIV. And we kept on going. And I educated probably like 5,000 high school students locally about HIV and AIDS in that time period. I'd go into the classrooms. That was one of my odd jobs. But then I'd say, like going to Iowa for the presidential caucus, that was obviously a turning point as well. One day I'd meet George Stephanopoulos, Bill Clinton, and then General Haig on the Republican side. I had Jesse Jackson asking me when I was going to move over to his campaign. Like Republicans, Democrats alike, and we'd all get along back then. And
yeah, please, we're going to talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, so it's a different world today, it seems like.
Yeah, I'm just going to stop for a minute and tell you that was what the old show to me was all about. Like, it used to be a time that we all knew it didn't matter. This was, being Republican or Democrat was just another one of those things on the ladder that you either chose this side or you chose that side. And I still played golf with you. I still razzed with you. It didn't matter. Like, it's funny because I'm truly trying to get back to that and preach that. And what's funny is, without even trying, you put what you get, what you put out there, you get back. I believe that in the universe, whether you believe in God or whatever, just karma, call it what you want. And, with me, I've been trying to prove that. And by no sheer coincidence, over the last year and a half, one of my best friends that has become like literally one of my closest buddies ever is a Republican.
Yeah.
And I tell people, like, dude, it doesn't matter. Why do you have to hate on somebody because they voted for this person? Even if you just really hate that guy, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make the person that voted for them that person.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed. Yeah.
It just makes them like, it's so funny because it just doesn't make sense to me. And I remember it. I remember that time because it was the same thing for religion. And I've even had this conversation with some of I have many different friends from many different races. Right. And I remember less racism in the sense of it wasn't, when we weren't as divided, it felt like it wasn't as divided on all counts. And the more divided things have become, then the more pronounced division that is there becomes.
Yeah.
And also gets magnified.
It might be more magnified, and maybe I think it was always there.
It was. I'm not saying it wasn't there. It just didn't feel the same. And I understand that I'm white, but I'm also Native American and Irish, which is the beatdown of the European nations, right? So I have some blood in me too that really understands. But I have the skin of white privilege, and I mean I get that. I don't deny it, but I just know that I didn't. The same friends that I hung out with were not saying some of the same things. Now, maybe they were holding back or whatever, but they surely weren't being as negative and racist as I saw around 2016 to, even still now, like what feels like, a backtrack, if you will, to me. But I'm the believer in that if there's a backtrack, that means it's 2 steps back and many steps forward.
Yeah, let's hope so. Yeah. I think everybody needs to travel and see the world, because it makes a huge difference.
What else is out there?
Yeah, no, I was recently in Trinidad a couple years ago, right before, we kind of locked everything down. And I was a minority there. My sister's adopted. She's half Black, half Vietnamese. And we found her biological family and went back to visit her grandmother. And it was a real moment of like understanding my privilege there. Not only as a white person, but also as someone who lives in Santa Barbara, California, one of the richest.
Right.
World,
right.
Oprah lives down the street, right? Yeah. Like it's so. It was an amazing experience because it really got me in touch with my privilege in general. So it was a good trip, and I think everybody needs to do things like that. See how the rest of the world lives.
I haven't been out there in the rest of the world, but I can tell you this: my wife, who we've been together now for 15 years, been married for over 12 years, closing in on 13, is a Hungarian American. But she was adopted, so she was originally born in Hungary, and she's very dark skinned. We always thought it was purely gypsy, but we found out that she's mostly European. When you look at she did that 23
maybe,
yeah,
all about it.
Yep. So she did that, and so predominantly Asian, but then there's African, there's Indian, there's some gypsy. There's a lot of something else too. The total mutt, which I know I am because I already know my bloods even without doing it. I'm Scotch Irish, Cherokee Blackfoot, German, and English. That and it's something that's I have
quite a combo.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's funny because I tell people, I'm like, and they're like, so that's 6. I'm like, no, there's 4 because there's Scotch, Irish and Scotch Irish. And then the same with Blackfoot. There's Cherokee, there's Blackfoot, and then there's Cherokee Blackfoot, which is a whole, that's the two that merged. So nonetheless, the whole point is that I've gotten a lot of that. Especially she reached out and found her original family, which was really cool. Just recently, we're going to be probably going over to, I would say in the next couple of years, we'll be making that trip over there, if not sooner. Money is always
they're open to it, frankly, because not everybody is. So
no, they're extremely. She's got a brother, and her brother talk all the time now. Doing FaceTime, and
it's awesome.
I was, just between you and me, I was really reluctant in the beginning. I'm like, because I just didn't want to I didn't want to see anybody take advantage of my wife, right? So I was like, please be wary of all these things. If any of these flags happen, right? If any of this stuff happens, these probably aren't your family, which they continue to not. So, I finally have let down my guard, if that makes sense. And I'm truly, because there's never any mention of money or anything like that. It's all about how you're doing it. And that's what you want to hear. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I know that sounds a little jaded, but unfortunately I am 50.
No, it's good to be careful.
It is. It's just good to be careful. And that was all I was ever, So let's talk about this. And I talked about it earlier, so we'll just kind of put it all together. And if you have more than one, please share, because I know you had more than one turning point. But what would you say was the biggest challenge, hurdle, mistake, whatever the heck words you want to use, that you feel like gave you the most on the other side? You know what I mean? So going through it was tough and it was brutal, but it also, because of it, gave you more than any other challenge maybe that you had surpassed.
Sure. There's probably two things I would think for sure, but the most challenging is probably gaining my sobriety. I've got 5 years sober as of June.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, taking it one day at a time still. I mean, there's still so much.
Every single day.
Yeah.
I tell my son that.
Yeah. And at the time, I was a marketing director, and 2 months into my sobriety, I got fired. And I had never been fired in my life. And I could give you a big story about it. I'm not going to.
Just curious, was the relation into how you were when you were a drunk? Did it have anything
to
do? Not at all. Which I bet that was another, like, what the heck?
I mean, when I seriously take a look at it, I'd say like who I was being was affected. It wasn't like I was.
No, I get it.
Yeah, but
that's many times the harder people, the folks that have the harder time actually coming to terms, by the way, because the bottoms are not as drastic and not always as disgusting, let's say, as some of us others.
Exactly. And I remember, afterwards, I left the building. I went around the corner. I was still smoking back then because I quit that too, and I was having a smoke. And I see these boots sticking out of the bushes. And right at that point, I really wanted to get a drink. I was going to go down the street to the bar. It was only 12, but I was going to do it. And I walk over, and there's a guy with a big bottle of Fireball stuck in his waistband, blacked out in the bushes. And what I did was it just like gave me that moment of, that could be me, like that could be any of us really. And I don't want to do that anymore. So I called the sheriffs, made sure the guy was okay, and went on. But that changed me, and what happened
was there for a reason.
What?
That happened. I'm sorry. I find that happened. That absolutely happened for a reason, because it made you go, no, I'm not going to go back to this.
Yeah.
Even though you were ready
to. Shot, right? Like, ooh, And and at that point I was like, okay, out of a job. What am I going to do? How do I do it? How do I take care of my family? And that was a big challenge. And what I ended up doing was, within a couple months, I decided to become a notary public like my wife and expand our business. And using my marketing experience, I grew the business, and I do not regret it at all. It's like I can go to the gym in the morning and still make plenty of money during the day. Like I remember about a year later, after I started doing it, I'm looking at these goals I had written down, and I had X amount per day, 20 days a month. I had it all worked out, and I had blown that out of the water, and I'm like, I'm better off than I was before. I get to see my daughter. I get to have lunch with my wife. I get to, like I say, go to the gym in the mornings, where a lot of my friends are still running into work, and still doing well. So, and I still take on some marketing clients as well, consulting wise. I still teach at UC Santa Barbara and Antioch University. It's great. But I love my life. And I don't think that would have happened without kind of like overcoming that challenge.
No, and that brings me to just a beautiful sunny point that I love to talk about. You know, the good are, for me, have like every good thing. And to give you an example, one of the best things in my life was moving out here to Colorado Springs. Right, mm-hmm. I'd been wanting to move out to Colorado since 2011, and didn't get out here until 2018. And the only reason we got out here, and it's my wife knows it, and everybody who knows me knows it, was because my wife got hit by a car, nearly killed. Was crossing the street as a pedestrian, not car hit by a car, but walking and hit. Car was doing about 40-45 miles an hour. 85% of people hit at that speed are done upon impact. Out of the 15% that are left, most of them are tragically messed up. Broken hips, broken femurs, broken neck, back. You get the point. Like really, really messed up. My wife somehow was hit, thrown 25 yards, hit the pavement. So first what she did, she suffered neurological damage because her head hit the windshield, and then thrown 20-25 yards, and then her head hit the concrete. But other than that, she had a little, if you can believe this, she jumped up because she saw the car just in the moment, and the car was in a turn. So essentially everything happened just right for her to kind of ragdoll in the air and take minimal impact. Her head taking most of it. Her fibula was cracked, but she was literally walking that weekend, hit Wednesday, and she's walking around in a walking cast on Saturday, or Sunday, watching the Falcons.
You guys are lucky.
Well, I don't believe in luck anymore. And what I mean by that is that happened exactly the way it was supposed to. It gave the guy driving, funny enough, was a 20-year-old, but the car was his father's that had more than $250,000 of coverage. And we're here because of that accident.
Because you're able to do that. Yeah.
That gave us a huge settlement that gave us everything we needed to make a move. I have a total of 4 kids. Now I have 5, because after that move, one moved out with us and stayed with us and has become a 5th son. So
good deal.
Everything happens the way it's supposed to, right?
Well, Colorado Springs is great. Yeah.
Oh man, it is. It is. I don't know if I'm ever going to leave here, because I really love, like, just sitting here at my window. I sit and stare at Pikes Peak, and that is just a gorgeous.
I've spent some time in Estes Park, so when Colorado is well known.
Oh yeah,
great.
So, with all of these different things, what would you say is your proudest single moment? And you had another challenge. Did you want to mention that too? We kind of.
Oh yeah.
So that's two. I'm going to
less of a challenge than like
your other challenge, and then tell me your proudest moment. Maybe it's one and the same.
Yeah, I was thinking about a lesson. Like a pitfall for me in terms of how I approach things throughout at least the marketing consulting part of my career, is it took me really way too long to recognize that when I meet a prospective client and we're talking about what I can do for them, it's as much me interviewing them as them interviewing me, right? And it took me a long time to understand that, because I would go into these meetings and I'd have, my intuition is usually, when my emotional intelligence is pretty high, I can kind of like sense people's energy and go, this would be a great fit, or no, they're going to want to be an art director and tell me, to move things over 2 pixels, and that they have to use fuchsia as their color, right? Like those kind of things, those kind of clients I don't work with very well.
Right. Because they're trying to do your job, and instead of paying you, instead of letting you do the job they paid you to do.
Yeah. So I learned to value.
I'm in marketing. Remember that, brother. 36 years, man. I know exactly who you're talking about. So
yeah,
we've turned down as many clients as we've accepted because of this. Literally.
Yeah. True. Yeah. So it took me a long time to get that, and so now oftentimes I might meet with someone and go, "Hey, I just don't think this is a good fit," because my instinct, my intuition, their actions have kind of shown me
you're
that
speaking on it and acting on it.
Yeah.
Acting on those intuitions rather than
money.
like I used to be the same way. Like, no, I need the money. Shut up.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've done that probably one too many times, but like in terms of, other moments that have really changed my life, I think accepting the job at Citrix Online was another big one. I spent 10 years there.
Citrix is huge.
Yeah.
Citrix that's huge. I used to sell their certifications.
Oh yeah, cool. It's a great company too. Citrix Online was where I was at, and I had a supervisor and a VP that worked with me every day, and they were, I was thinking about mentors here, and that I don't know if they would know that I'd call them a mentor, but they are,
right? But
in the sense that they had my back, and they would teach me stuff I didn't know, and we'd always collaborate and work together. I learned Agile while I was there, which is kind of like collaborative working. Yeah, it's good stuff, and those kind of things like really made a huge difference for me. And it's like that kind of support and little things like, the first week I started there, they sent me to a website analytics conference in Washington, D.C., where my dad lives. So I got to see my dad and go to the conference, at the first week of working there. And
that's a nice bonus. It
was nice. They were really good to me. So my wife and I got to go to Hawaii a couple of times with the sales team because I was the MVP, for the marketing department, and it was a lot of fun. So I really appreciate them, and they gave me a lot of knowledge, which has helped me today. And I'm always still trying to learn. I recently got my certified digital marketing professional certificate from the Digital Marketing Institute, and it was interesting, right? I teach this stuff, right? But I went through their program because UCSB became a partner with them. So they gave me a free course and certification. So let's do it.
Hey, why not do it?
Yeah. And it was
else you can add to, and let's face it, I know where you're going. You get a nugget out of everything you do. You always get a nugget.
And that was the thing. Like, I learned how they would teach it, versus how I would teach it. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty good.
Gives you a different perspective.
And I can incorporate it in my teaching. Yep. So it worked out pretty well.
Which makes you ultimately, that makes you just a little bit better, not just for your clients, right? And your potential partners in the future, but also the people that you end up training and teaching and all those people that you affect below you.
Exactly.
And I don't mean below you. I mean, in the sense of your teachings downward,
yeah.
Right? Yeah. I don't believe in high or above, just so you
know. No. I'm all into lateral organizational maps,
Yeah, I only talk about learning. Learning trickles down, right? And although it's funny because sometimes it actually learning trickles up too, right? If you're really receptive, if you're a great leader, you're going to learn from your team as well. Yeah. But then it just turns right back around, and you put it right back out to the team.
So, like last night, I was teaching a class on web analytics, UCSB. We have some international.
You say web analytics?
Web analytics, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the data that comes into websites and figuring out what we need. And we have international students there. So I have a mix of people that are BA students that are taking my class. It's a professional and continuing ed class. And I have international students from universities in Germany and Sweden and Japan.
Awesome.
And what's great is that the international students teach me so much, because I'll ask them, like, how does it work, in Germany? Do you guys do email marketing the same way? And they'll go, oh, actually, we do it this way. And it's fascinating to me to see what other cultures do. Because sometimes they can give us ideas for what to do here. Like in Europe, they're so much more into privacy.
Yes.
Email marketing.
They truly believe in privacy. They don't just say it; they actually act on it.
Yeah, I think we could take some cues from there. Frankly,
yeah.
Even though I'm a marketing guy and want to make money for my client, I think we could take some cues.
You could do it like they're a working model that you can still do it with a huge modicum of privacy.
Yes, yeah, you can totally do it. So yeah, so I learn a lot from them too, and. Teaching is just a joy. It's not something I make a lot of money at, but I enjoy it. So I continue to do it. And it's worthwhile. So yeah, I'm also working with a local company to make marketing education videos for learning platforms.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, I know we had the things that so do you want to just kind of talk about that for a minute? Because that's
I'm not sure which learning platforms it's going to go to, right? But it's really nice. It's a cool company. They're I had to audition, and I'm in the middle of making the script. And what they're going to do is professionally produce it. So they're going to have a set, makeup, we're going to decide what to wear. They'll have a teleprompter. It'll be pretty cool because I'll be able to professionally produce what I already teach. And it's really the future of education in my mind. I mean, I think we'll always be
the future of the world, brother. It is.
It'll be all over. So
once we got this and iPhone said, here's FaceTime, and I'm not saying that it's because of iPhone. They were just the first one to do it in the sense of on a platform like that. I was like, okay, this is it. Give it 20 more years, and that's the way we'll talk to each other on. Well, it'll be soon. We'll have it on our watches. It's just a matter of time.
Well, and I taught only by Zoom during the whole lockdown period.
Oh, I bet that was interesting.
And it was good. I'm comfortable enough because I go to meeting. Right. I've created breakout rooms. I can create, empathy. I can create connection with people online, but I like high flex. Right now I'm doing it that way where students can choose to come in and I can see them in a classroom. There's a camera in the corner of the room and we're doing Zoom at the same time. And it's working out pretty well because
Did you say that was high points?
High flex. It's
high flex. High flex. Is that spelled
HIGFLEX? So it's kind of like the most recent education term for that, where people can choose to be on Zoom or be in the classroom. And we're testing it out. I'm kind of a guinea pig, since I'm comfortable with
still
technology. In beta. They're letting me do it, right? Yeah. So
would you spell it one more time, please, sir?
HYFLEX.
HYFLEX.
Yeah.
Okay, so I did hear. Okay,
and so there's a couple of things I've learned from that, like in the sense that it helps if the students in the classroom have their laptops so they can
it gives a more complete feeling of being in a classroom virtually rather than halfway.
Exactly. So it's good for me because I respond better to people in person. And I do
feel better. Do you feel more comfortable throughout that whole process?
Yeah. I feel really comfortable with it. And it's not more, it's like either or. For me, like I said, I don't mind doing it this way. And I don't mind being in the classroom, but I do enjoy actually meeting them because there's something different to that.
There's something for the visceral life connection happening and like face to face.
I can value you're in Japan and you want to take my class. Come on.
Right. That's okay. Exactly. Yeah. That's the beauty of the world we're in today is that you can actually do something like that. And vice versa. You can attend courses and things like that, over there.
Seriously. And then the best teachers will win out, I would think.
Oh yeah, no, I believe so. I think it's funny, but even interview, everything is being done this way now where, if you do an interview, then they send you a link and they want you to create a video answers. So exactly. It's really quite interesting. So yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Who are some of those mentors, by the way? What was the just the names, and what would you say was the one best piece of advice that you got?
Yeah, well, my direct supervisor, Sarah, was great. She encouraged me with everything I did. And then Katie, my VP, always had my back. If I wanted to do a campaign that wasn't really like the normal kind of thing you do, she'd ask me for the data first. She'd want me to prove it. Nels, can we do a test? And so I learned the value from her and Sarah about A/B testing. So just about any change we'd make on that site, we'd test it out for a week because we had enough traffic that we could find out within days whether something was good or not.
Especially when you have those kind of numbers. I've told people, if you have anything more than 5,000 numbers that you can consistently deal with, and you've got stuff that you can easily A/B test.
Down to button color on the, on the submit.
And it matters. I'm like, dude,
you can get a percent.
I'll tell you my one issue is when somebody that doesn't really know quite the process of A/B testing and they give me 2 or 3 changes and I'm like, dude, it's a one at a time thing, man. I can't. How do I know what affected it, brother?
Unless you want to get a really expensive Adobe test and target tool, right?
I'm trying to do it with the noggin up here and as cost effective as possible.
Exactly. And then my buddy James owns a auto glass company, and I consider him a mentor because he's just kind of like, he always gets up, dusts himself off, and keeps on going.
There's something to be said for that.
Yeah,
that is a great school of thought.
And I just really, whether he's up or down or whatever, he just keeps on going forward, and he's been a real inspiration to me on that.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, go ahead. No, were you going to say something?
I was going to see if there was one other ones. I'd probably say also, like, there's been some more academic mentors as well. I was lucky enough to take a class at UCSB from Pat Cadell, who was Jimmy Carter's campaign manager back in '76.
And you said Cadell, is that?
Yeah, Cadell.
Yep.
Pat. And he told me once, about writing marketing copy, to write it as if the person reading it is in 6th grade. And I think that's like the advice that stuck with me to this day.
You want to know what's really funny? Like the internet, the SEO, and I'm sure you know some great deal about this, but the SEO, the school of thought for the last few years is to write around that 9 to 11th grade.
Yeah.
But what's really funny is I've explained to them, like, if you do that, you're actually, and this is where it gets kind of funny, but technical. Google at best, their AI that is doing the bulk of the reading of the content now, because they can't put human eyes, is at best a 5th grade level. And I don't even think it's truly there. It's more like 3rd or 4th grade level.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant AI. Yeah. But it's still a young AI in the sense of its reading capability. So, like, we write content for attorneys, and we tell them, like, we really want to write on a 5th, 6th grade level, so that the AI can read it, but it's got to be interesting enough for a collegiate person to also find it interesting. Yeah, that's tricky writing.
Yeah, I've done some like keyword research for a friend of mine who's a family law lawyer, and like the things people put in search. Like, once I created a keyword phrase list, she's like, what? Why would that be on there? Well, that's what people actually put in. The
one mistake I think that particularly attorneys, and obviously I work with them most, but I have worked with every single type of service industry as well as professional, on both all the different professions and all the different blue collars. Okay, both sides. They have a hard time as business owners, right? Because no matter what business you are, whether it's blue collar, white collar, professional, doesn't matter. Once you step into the business owner role, you have to look at things differently. And many times they have a hard time looking at and accepting the fact that they are not going to think like probably 90% of the people that buy from them.
True.
And what works for them, right? And I'm like, man, if you think of it that way, it's really the worst thing. You really have to go by the numbers and the averages and who your target audience is. And then you use the information about your audience and attack it from your best numbers possible to funnel down leads. It's just, I've been doing this for too long, and I try to tell them that. And I'll say today, most people get it the way that I explain it, but there's just still some guys like you talked about, or girls in this day and age. Quite frankly, I have a lot of women business owners, and they're many times between you and me, the women, because it seems like they feel like they have more to prove. And that's what I've heard from them directly. They're even stronger and harder than some of the guys. So the ones that are wanting it their way, I even have a harder time dealing with them, but they want to dot the I their way and rather than the way it needs to be. And I know you know what I'm talking about here. And you just try to explain to them, look, take yourself out of this, put yourself in these shoes, put a whole different hat on. I know you're an attorney, but as a business owner, you're making a decision that's going to affect the attorney's leads. That's how I'll say it to them. And they're like, that's when I get a pause. I know that makes sense. But when I tell them, like, look, the decision you're making over here is going to hurt the guy you're trying to help over here, which is you.
Right. Exactly.
So, sorry to go off there.
No worries. Yeah.
What's something strange, quirky? Give me one of those.
Strange, quirky.
That nobody knows about you, or I shouldn't say nobody, but the bulk of people, like something more like your wife.
Yeah. Right. I'm an avid chess player, and not a lot of people know that. And I actually have a Twitch username. So a lot of the kids these days, they'll be on Twitch for video games, right? But it's also like this an amazing place for chess education.
Yeah.
So there are grandmasters that go on Twitch and they'll give lessons for free right there. So
Nice.
I use Twitch a lot. I play probably a tournament chess game a week. I used to play when I was a boy. And then when Queen's Gambit came out, I got excited about it again and have been doing it again. So
I'm a chess lover, but I do not know the specific rules of tournament. What is the time limit for the chess game, or is there truly no time limit and it's just keeping time of how long the match lasts?
usually you create by agreement, it's either 30, 60, 90 minutes, something like that. And you agree on that. And the grandmaster level, it could be, 3 hours.
Do you have a per move time limit?
Not necessarily, but you might have 45 minutes, let's say. Right now I'm playing in a 45-minute game with 15-second increments, which means I have 45 minutes to win or lose the game. And if I get to 45 minutes and I've made something like 40 moves, I can get extra time based on how many moves you get. And usually the game's done within the hour and a half, 45 minutes a player.
Right.
But it's when you're down to like 4 minutes and you're like 10 moves away from winning, it gets a little.
You're like, damn, am I going to have enough time to actually
make my moves? Yeah.
Right. That's I was kind of trying to go there because I am a chess player. My grandfather is the one that taught me, and he taught me the old school way in the sense that he just kept whipping my ass until I learned the tactics that he was doing. Right.
Exactly.
And he's like, this is really the only way to learn, because the beautiful thing about chess, which some people get, which there's still a few people that just don't get, but there's only so many games that can be played. It is a game that every game that it can ever have been played has been played on more occasions than we can count. Right.
Well, actually,
is there one that hasn't been played yet?
Well, I would say that the first 8 to 10 to 15 at the most moves have been played before. But after that, it's usually a brand new game. Because think about it, you got 68 squares and all those possibilities. It
is, but yes. there's only a way. What we know is it can be planned out, or it can be
planned out for the first dozen or so moves. But
even after that, you can look at it. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about chess is you can look at, if you're good, then you're looking at every single thing that can happen based on every single move you can possibly make from there. Now that's the really difficult part. Yeah. Right. I mean, that's obviously we tend to focus on certain pieces, right? And have a strategy. And then that's how that goes. But to me, that's what I meant is like, there's only so many ways you're going to play it. I haven't heard of anybody coming up with a new strategy and a way of playing chess.
There's not many new openings. Yeah.
Right. You either master what's been around for literally thousands of years at this point, or,
Yeah. That's the fun thing
something
about
else.
Me, is learning all that. Yeah.
I don't know if you saw, but I actually I developed a game that I tell people is a combination of chess, checkers, as well as Go, Pente, and what's the other one that I always put in there? Connect Four. So, and the reason that I say chess is because chess is still done on a structurally 8x8 grid, right? Mine is a 7x7x7, so it's 3-dimensional, but essentially it's Connect 5 on a 3-dimensional plane that you're stacking down, and the table rotates. So you can only turn the table. And when you're talking about turning the table on a 3-dimensional plane, let's just face it, wouldn't it bring a whole new degree altogether if you could turn the chess table every time it was your turn and literally continue to turn it around and look at the different angles of what you're trying to do?
Sure.
Yep.
Sure.
So that's it's called Stack 'em 5. Yeah. I patented that back in 2011. And I think you would actually really, I say this because we're not too far from each other. So if we ever find the means to be at the same conference or the same Grand Canyon or Las Vegas or something,
yeah,
I take my game with me almost everywhere, because any board gamer plays it, understands it, gets it in less than 30 seconds, and agrees that it's really great. Here's the best part about it. You'll love it. Every abstract game that I mentioned that this game is like has one thing in common. And most abstract strategy games do. 2-player. It's kind of almost in the definition of abstract strategy that you only have 2 players, right? Stack 'em 5 will allow up to 8 players at the same time.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And every single variable between 2 to 8, Nels, brings different strategies and a different type of gameplay depending on the number specifically that is playing. Because once you add a third person, you now have the cutthroat factor.
Yeah.
You also have the factor of, did they see it or am I going to have to block it? Right. And the more you add, the bigger that factor becomes.
Yeah.
It's really very fun and quite a lot of fun.
That sounds cool.
So we've gone over time, I know. So I'll make it. Or we're getting close to. Oh no, we haven't. We haven't gone. Okay, we're not quite there. What's the craziest thing? The one single craziest thing you've ever done? Do you have anything in mind? Did you write something down for this?
Sure. Not fully marketing related, but I was working at the Biltmore Hotel and Room Service in Montecito.
Oh, this sounds good.
In the 80s. And it was Heather Locklear and Tommy Lee's wedding. And
oh my God.
And first thing that happened was I'm riding, we had these bikes, these tricycles with food warmers in the front.
Right.
And I go out and there's Heather Locklear on the putting green in her wedding dress, and I fell over because she looked so good. But later that night, it was about 2 a.m. I was just about off work, and Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull at the party.
Oh my God.
He's like, why don't you stay? Hang out, have a beer with me. And so I called in right there and I said, guys, I'm not coming back. But I stayed there and partied with him all night, and because I was invited, and it was crazy. It was a great time.
I have to ask, you just named one of my all-time idols.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, everybody would always name, Pink Floyd, The Doors, Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And when asked me, I always said the same thing. I was like, I'm a Toll fan. I was like, and they're like, who's Toll? I'm like, Jethro effing Tull. And I would pull out like songs from The Wood, because to me that's one of the greatest.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, don't get me wrong, Benefit is clearly an incredible album, and I don't deny it, but I would always pull out that one. To me, it was where he started to kind of get crazy.
Sure.
And I say he because by that time Ian was doing, a lot of people don't know it, but by the time it was in the 80s, he was pretty much basically the band except for who he hired to go on the road with him.
Right.
And he's the only single thing that has remained throughout that entire time. And I brag about him all the time. So I have to ask, did you keep his contact information? Do you still talk to him?
I did not. We had a good time. And there was a bunch of rock stars there, so I met a few, but it was fun.
No, that's awesome. That's cool.
And I probably don't remember enough of what happened that night.
That's the way it should be, brother. Hey, listen,
it's part of my.
Like I said, I had
part of my
ask,
Dracula in AA, right?
Yeah, I mean, you named my idol. I had to ask.
Yeah, no worries. It was a pleasure meeting him, and that the other thing at the Biltmore was I got to meet Ronald Reagan's staff. So Howard cool. Baker would stay there, and all the press people, and I'd serve Senator Cranston and Chief of Staff Baker there, in the rooms. It was awesome.
That was kind of one of your earlier exposures into politics without even knowing that was going to probably be a direction that you went into. I would imagine at that time. Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I was surprised the Secret Service let me through since I'm such a little. but they were good. Those were the days. It was fun.
Well, listen, here will be the last question, because most of the other stuff in there. I was just curious. I'll ask it like this: favorite podcast and favorite tool, in the sense of, most of the time this is software this day and age.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite podcast and what's your favorite tool using throughout the day to do your job?
So not to do my job, because I love Dave Chang's podcast, right? I'm into cooking.
What was that one?
Dave Chang.
Got it.
Yeah. So, he owns Momofuku in Vegas and New York. And he does amazing things with Asian food. He's got, a product line that's really cool. I love how he talks about food and learning more about it. That's one thing. But my indispensable piece of software, besides any of the Adobe products, would probably be Things, which is a to-do list manager on my phone. And it uses
that came out about
to get things done
5 years ago, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember that was one I remember. I got that one myself before I was just like, this looks like a really cool to-do program.
Way ahead of its time. It's really good stuff. And it uses the Get Things Done framework, which is great. Because what I do every morning when I get up after my coffee and I read the news is I kind of make a list of, because otherwise things will be going on in my head all day. So I write them down. And I have 3 buckets. I have doing now, which is like stuff that I need to think about today. Not doing now, which is some things that I can schedule in the future and definitely put in a calendar with a time, a place, a phone number or a Zoom, whatever,
Whatever.
And then there's never doing now, which is like in the realm of someday, I want to write that book. Right.
Right.
So,
like I can only work on this if these other ones have been satisfied.
And I'm not going to schedule that right now because I just don't know when I get to it. And that allows me to get the stuff out of my head basically every morning. And I'll put stuff in the calendar right there. And Things is a great product because it like allows you to make that to-do list, put things in your calendar at the same time. It's good stuff.
Does it give you some customization too? I'm assuming in the sense of like, maybe can you create kind of your own flow?
Yeah, somewhat. You can create your own categories. It works well with Siri, and it connects with your reminders on your iPhone, etc.
Right.
It's really, really good stuff. I'm amazed at how thoughtful they were in building the software. So that's my unsolicited review there.
No, I it's funny. I'm gonna probably recheck them out. Just between you and me, they knowing how bad I am, they may still be downloaded on my iPhone.
Yeah, maybe. And it is something you pay for actually, because it is so much better than everything else out there.
Right.
But it's worth it. So.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, listen, man, I really enjoyed it. I hope that one thing I extend out to the folks that seemed like they had a good time and we had a little bit of a connection is hopefully maybe we can connect again in a year and see where you're at and
sure.
how you're doing.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
Great, thanks, man. Have a great afternoon. I really enjoyed it.
You too.
Thanks for listening to 15 Minutes. Be sure to subscribe and we'll see you next time.